Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is a breakout turn-based RPG that is, in all the best ways, very French. It was developed by Sandfall Interactive as their first game, and published by Kepler Interactive. There's a whole lot to talk about with Expedition 33, and I'm honestly not quite sure where to start. When the game first released, I knew right away that I would really like the game. However, due to circumstances going on in my real life, I decided to pick the game up later. I wasn't even sure I was going to play it the same year that it released, but after a lot of poking and prodding from my friends, I took the plunge and played the game. Now, before I played the game, I had not seen a single trailer, and all the gameplay I saw was from people streaming, and it just seemed like a standard JRPG with quick time events. I didn't think it was a Game of the Year kind of game, honestly. But really? I was wrong. I picked it up at the behest of my friends Tellurian and Vex, who were both decidedly not turn-based game people. And, well, once I picked it up, I couldn't put it down. I finished the game within 2 weeks while focusing on university, and I have a lot of things to say. I think that most of the things that they do aren't actually super innovative, but it is refined to the point where it feels very fresh and new. Clair Obscur is an absolutely phenomenal game with a strong story and world, as well as engaging and fun combat, which I will expand more on later in the video. I also appreciate that the game has multiple difficulty settings, with the story being very accessible, and it has allowed me to indoctrinate friends who are more on the casual scale of gaming. For context, I myself played on the hardest difficulty. I grew up on a lot of Final Fantasy games, so turn-based games were very easy to pick up for me. And nowadays, I play a lot of Souls games, so I figured that the combat was going to really just click. And actually, it did click, but not because of Souls games. Parrying in this game is basically Royal Guard from Devil May Cry. The timing feels about the same as Devil May Cry 5's Royal Guard, and considering that the director of the game has a YouTube channel dedicated to absolutely clowning on Virgil, the final boss of the game, that makes sense. As always, I will be using footage from early parts of the game in order to avoid spoilers. Unlike my other videos though, I don't think I'll use New Game Plus footage, as I don't know how it handles spoiler gameplay stuff, and I haven't done post-launch stuff on my save, so I don't want to go into New Game Plus yet. It's okay though, since that means I can actually experience normal difficulty and see how that feels. I think something I've noticed while writing this script is that the game actually made me take notice and focus on a lot of stuff that I don't usually go deep into. Let's talk about the story and presentation. Clair Obscur is set in a fantasy version of France, in a city named Lumiere. Lumiere is an island on the edge of the map and has been for a long time. In the far north, a massive monolith stands, with a number painted on it. Every year, the paintress wakes up and paints a new number, one lower than the previous year. Everyone who is of that age or higher dies. In-universe, this is called the Gamage. Lumiere has been living with this existential threat for 67 years, with the number having started at 100. The tone of the story is somber and emotional, and the presentation is absolutely phenomenal. We play as Gustave, an inventor from Lumiere. This is the first day of his last year, and he, along with many others, have decided to join this year's expedition in order to attempt to stop the paintress from ever painting again. The introduction to the game lets us get to know Gustave himself, Maëlle, his adoptive sister who is joining his expedition early, and Sophie, a former lover of Gustave. You learn a bit of why they broke up, how they still cared about each other, among many other things. There's a lot that you can do in the intro, and it sets the tone and character relationships very well. I'm actually going to stop going into detail on this story because I genuinely think this is best experienced yourself. It was the best introduction to a game that I'd played in years, and I knew that whatever journey the game was throwing us into, I wanted Gustave to succeed. Let me introduce all the other party members here as well, since I'm not going deeper into the main story. The main party members are Gustave, Maëlle, Luna, and Ciel, though I'll cover Eskie as well. Gustave, as we know, is the inventor who invented the Lumina converter, which allows for the party to harness chroma from defeated enemies to strengthen themselves. He's a pretty straightforward character who wants to protect his sister and defeat the paintress for the good of Lumiere. He has moments where he does lose his nerve, which is quite realistic considering everything that's going on. Maëlle is his adopted sister and a young girl who never fit in with Lumiere. She decided to join the expedition in order to leave to explore the world since she didn't feel like she belonged in Lumiere. I love the siblings' dynamics, and the amount of little sister energy that she radiates is so entertaining. Luna is a researcher from Lumiere, and was the one who charted the path for the expedition, and is now the one who is most focused with their objective in stopping the Paintress. She definitely feels like the logical anchor of the group, sometimes at the cost of ignoring the emotional aspects. Ciel is the final expeditioner to join the party and was once a teacher and farmer. She is the one most at peace with everything going on and is the emotional anchor of the party. She lightens the mood when necessary and is very noticeably empathetic, and she's very pleasant to see and interact with. Eskie is a giant marshmallow who is absolutely overpowered but is a lazy boy, so he doesn't actually do any fighting for you. He does act as a mount of sorts and will clear the way for you in open world segments, and later on even swim and fly. Story-wise, he's a legendary figure in the world who is enlisted by the party in order to travel across the ocean. And, being a giant marshmallow, he provides a lot of emotional support over the course of the story. Can I also just mention the white-haired man? The one we see as the antagonist from the moment that they land? The white-haired man's introduction itself was absolute cinema, and every time he shows up, he demands your attention. The sound of his cane hitting the ground, and the slowdown every time he shows up, just absolutely amazing. I love this guy, and I genuinely think he's one of the coolest antagonists in recent years. I think that this cast in general is absolutely phenomenal. They bounce off each other well and have fantastic chemistry, and they all have a lot of backstory with each other. I'll go into the gameplay details of the characters later since there's a lot to talk about on that front. Overall, I actually think that the presentation is really just what hooks me into the game. The actual story itself I feel is quite predictable. I was able to predict almost every twist, but I don't honestly think that's a bad thing because the execution was very well pulled off. I actually had like double the length of this segment originally with what I wanted to say, but it veered a little too hard into spoiler territory, so I just cut it short. Just realize that if I'm talking this much about the story of a game, it's something special. In terms of the visuals, the game is absolutely gorgeous, with an amazing artistic direction that makes you feel like you're in a dream. The environmental design is extremely varied and is consistently fantastic the whole way through. I adore how much the whimsical design of the different area in the world contrasts with the realism found inside of Lumiere. The enemy designs in Expedition 33 are also extremely good, with a lot of significant enemies having strong symbolism relating to the story weaved into their design. I adore a lot of these enemies and I think that they're really cool. I think the biggest point in favor of the game for me, and there are a lot of points in favor of the game honestly, is that the music is absolutely phenomenal. I can just pick a track out of the soundtrack album and find something that's an absolute banger. Like, of course there are a few standouts that I absolutely adore, but just take a listen to a snippet of even the opening. I can't stress how amazing some of these songs are. Even if you don't end up clicking with the game, the music's gonna stay with you. I have listened to these songs on repeat to the point where I think I actually know the lyrics despite not knowing the language at all. On that note though, please do not look up the lyrics of the song unless you finish the game. It hints very, very clearly at a lot of the twists present in the story. Speaking of language though, let's talk about the voice acting of the game. To be completely clear, my whole playthrough in the first one was in English because I'm a huge voice actor simp and I adore Ben Starr and Jennifer English's voices. Their performance, and everyone else's, were absolutely phenomenal, and the only nitpick I could come up with was that the lip sync wasn't perfect. That's it. In the playthrough I started to record the footage, I did play in French though. And I will be honest, since I do not understand the language and have not heard the language very much, I cannot say if the voice acting is good. However, it is pleasant enough to listen to, and I have no complaints, though I would always lean into the English voice acting just because they were such fantastic performances, and I actually know the language. Before we move on, I just wanted to mention that we get a lot of different costumes and hairstyles for different characters. It's not a major part of my footage because they don't give you too many options in the early game, though later on you will get a lot of options if you'd like to customize. Be warned though, if you use some of the sillier customizations, it will make the cutscenes look really goofy and kill the mood. Oh boy, another gameplay segment that's gonna take half the video. Hi, that's me! Okay, let's get started quickly then, since we have a lot to talk about. I'll start on the combat and go from there. Combat is actually a pretty standard ATB gauge turn-based RPG system. This just means that each character's turn comes up separately rather than as a party. The UI here reminds me a bit of how Honkai's has it set up with the turn order on the top left, character stats and such on the bottom, all that jazz. During combat you have a resource called AP, which is required for utilizing skills and shooting. Generating AP is done through attacking and parrying mainly, though you can unlock passives that generate AP through other means, or boosting AP generation through standard methods. The AP that you generate can be used for skills and shooting. Skills are pretty self-explanatory and are essentially bigger attacks that do more and engage with mechanics. When you use them, you'd need to do a quick time event that boosts the damage and potency of the skill. These are pretty simple and I think reminds me a lot of the gunblade mechanics in Final Fantasy VIII. I'll expand later on this as there's quite a bit unique to each character. On the other hand though, shooting will consume 1 AP but not end the turn, so you can actually keep shooting, then attack, or use a skill. Shooting is just extra damage, targeted at whatever you aim at, meaning that you can hit weak spots, and depending on the passives you have equipped, you can also do other things as well. In terms of defense, you have 3 options. The first one is dodging. Dodging is easily the safest option for making sure you don't die, as it has the biggest window of safety compared to the other options. The second option is parrying, which is the counterattack option if you manage to parry every single hit in the enemy's combo. The timing is tight, but if you manage to do it, your counter will help cut the enemy's HP down by quite a bit. The third option is to jump, and this is specific to some attacks only. Not much to say on this one, it just gives you a free hit. I wanted to slide this bit in, but past where I stopped recording footage, you get access to a limit break kind of mechanic called gradient attacks, which provides a lot of damage and setup for unique character mechanics, as well as extra turn to follow up on that setup. When you get access to this, you also get access to gradient parries, which allow you to parry gradient attacks from enemies. Essentially, they're the same as normal parries, but just for specific attacks. I think that this rounds out the basic combat system quite well. Let's go into each character's unique mechanics. I'm actually super impressed at how unique every character is from a gameplay perspective. I'll be talking specifically about the 4 characters we get access to at the start, though you can get access to 2 more characters later in the story with their own mechanics. These 2 characters also have really cool mechanics, though unfortunately there are a lot of spoiler stuff surrounding them, so I'm not going to talk about them. Gustav, our leading man, is a pretty standard fighter archetype with his sword and his gun. His unique mechanic is his mechanical arms charge, which builds up whenever he hits an enemy's dodges or parries. When the charge is filled up, he can release all the power with his overcharge skill, which does a massive amount of damage and can break the enemy if the meter is filled. He's not too complex and is a fantastic character to start with, since he's the first character that you get access to. Luna is a relatively standard mage archetype. Her unique mechanic is her elemental stain mechanic, which generates elemental stains based on the skills that she uses. With specific elemental stains on her weapon, each skill can be boosted as well, leading to a pretty rotational flow to her gameplay. You can actually build her in multiple ways, both for offense or as a support, since her skill set is so versatile. She's also able to hit every elemental weakness with her spells, so she fits in with every team comp. Mael is a stance-based duelist, and each stance provides different bonuses. She has 3 main stances and all her skills will shift her into a specific stance after she uses them. However, she cannot shift into a stance she's already in. If you use a skill that would shift her into a stance she's already in, she will become stanceless, which is to say no bonuses. Offensive stance increases the damage that Mael does and the amount of damage that she takes on getting hit. Defensive stance halves the damage taken and increases the amount of AP you gain from parrying. Virtuoso Stance increases the damage Mael does by 200%. Everything around Mael is focused on doing damage, which makes some of her skills, like taking damage for her allies, feel really out of place, and like they meant to give her more variety, but maybe didn't quite have the time to flesh it out. Ciel is a jack of all trades, with a unique mechanic that buffs her skills based on what she previously used. Her unique mechanic is the Day, Night, and Twilight mechanic. Her Day skill setup stacks on the enemies, which are utilized by the Night skills. Using both puts Twilight buff on her, which boosts the damage from both Day and Night skills. She can also provide a lot of buffs with her skills and can push her allies' turn order up. She also has a lot of damage potential, but it requires a lot more setup compared to the other party members to do equivalent damage. Her gameplay flow can be quite rotational, but she has a lot of options for which role she wants to lean towards during the rotation, so she can be quite adaptive during moment-to-moment gameplay. Moving on to the enemy part of the equation, it's quite a standard RPG, I would say. Enemies have HP and a break meter you can fill and proc to stun them. In general, the enemy design on the gameplay end is pretty good. The telegraphing's there's a lot of Elden Ring level delays that can be tricksy though. The sound cues do help a lot, though with how tight some of the timing is and how short the sound cue is, I struggle to get the timing for each enemy right until I already know the attack, and the sound cue is just there to slightly help. One point of complaint that I do have is that attacks that can be jumped feel a bit inconsistent. It feels a bit weird, but it's not a super major complaint since attacks that can be jumped do have a huge symbol shown when it comes out. Now, to go into the meat of this game's complexity, build crafting. There are a lot of moving parts to this system, so let's start with what I would consider the core. Weapons in this game tend to form the core of each character's build and determine the stats that the character's damage scales off of. Each weapon generally has 3 passives that unlock at upgrade levels 4, 10, and 20, with the exception of starting weapons since they don't have any passives. These passives are massively powerful and can really change how the character feels to play as well as synergizing with different parts of their kit. To go deeper, we also have 3 slots to equip Pictos for every party member. Pictos have 2 components to them, first being the stats provided by the Picto, and the second being the Lumina, the passive that is associated with the Picto. The stats are going to be the main deciding factor by the time you get to late game, as once you've fought 4 battles with a Picto equipped, you can actually equip the Lumina on anyone in the party as long as you have the Lumina points available. Each Lumina costs a different amount of Lumina points, and any Lumina that gives the same effect tends to stack, but they do tend to cost more points as you get to the higher numbered ones. You can also increase each number's Lumina point cap by using items called Colors of Lumina back at the camp. The Colors of Lumina are generally found on the world or through side quests and bosses. The system is very complex with a lot of moving parts, but I really adore it. The biggest complaint that I had initially was that there were no presets, so each time that you changed the build, you'd have to try to remember everything that you had equipped in order to return to the old one. However, there was a patch between my first playthrough and this one that I did for the recording that added presets. I haven't utilized it much as it was too early and there's not actually that many options yet, but it's there, so the complaint has been removed. An example of some of the builds I utilized with the options available in the recordings are as follows. Ciel would act first, and with energizing start 1 and 3, I forgot where 2 was so I didn't find it, she would immediately be able to cast, all set, and apply rush, protect, and powerful to the whole party. She would then keep the team's damage up through marking card or attacking with exposing attack equipped. If there is enough spare AP, she can also use intervention to immediately push Mael's turn up for more damage. Another option I actually thought about was using Fortune's Fury instead of intervention, which would actually double Mael's damage if the turn order didn't require intervention as well. I built for Luna to apply and maintain burn stacks on enemies using Wildfire, or Immolation if I'm fighting a boss, and had Healing Light on hand in order to keep the team healed and regain AP through thermal transfer as needed. She also had Rebirth equipped just in case I screwed up my parries and someone died. This would lead into Mael's setup, where she would start in Virtuoso Stance and have enough AP to immediately use Fleuret Fury for high damage off the bat, then maintain it with Mezzo Forte, which allows her to get back some of her AP and keep her current stance, and if she's somehow stunned or gets dropped out of Virtuoso Stance, Luna's burn stacks allow her to immediately hop back into Virtuo's stance with Swift Stride, and I just have to maintain the loop. This brings us to Gustav. He was my backliner, so he would only actually show up if the main team died. In the recording for this review, I actually didn't have that happen, so I brought him out to play around with the build in the footage a bit. Since he was always solo, I gave him all the if solo grants X effects, so he always had Rush, Powerful, and Protect applied, as well as big damage boost and 100% crit chance. The setup was essentially that he'd start with enough AP to use Lumiere Assault right away, which would put him on the threshold to use Overcharge. Being solo, he would get targeted by every enemy, so he'd be able to parry and gain AP as long as I didn't screw up. From there on, I would rotate between Strike Storm and Overcharge for massive damage. The friends that got me into this game, Tellurian and Vex, actually managed to break the game through the build crafting system, with them managing to basically one-shot most enemies by the end. I was not actually engaging super much with the system, just equipping whatever felt like it made sense, since I was streaming the game and I really didn't want to just sit in the menus for like 2 hours for a Galaxy Brain build. I figured that the struggle was more entertaining to watch than menus. I will say though, that the approach I had made the game feel a lot more smooth difficulty curve-wise than what they described to me. Honestly, considering everything, I don't think that Expedition 33 actually does anything new for the genre, but it refines everything that's already there and pulls relevant stuff from other genre. So I think this makes the game flow and feel amazing, and I really respect that, since I don't think every new game needs to invent a whole new system to stand out. Moving on to the open world, I think that it was done absolutely fantastically. The open worlds remind me a lot of the old Final Fantasy open worlds, where everything is scaled down and you're scaled up, so you can wander everywhere. And even with the scaled up characters we have, the world still feels quite massive with the visual design. The design is pretty standard, with paths blocked until you hit certain progression thresholds and upgrades. On the world, there are different dungeons and minigames that you can partake in. The dungeons are pretty standard design, I would say, with a lot of branching paths that lead to treasure and loop back to the main path, and of course the main path leads to the boss. I've heard that the main path is always lit up by lights where the optional paths are not. I don't know if that's actually true. I just never saw it, even when I was looking for it when I was returning to the game. If it is there though, I do think that's like a really cool and fantastic design decision. I just didn't notice it. One complaint I do have about dungeons, but this doesn't quite apply to early game, is that some dungeons just are arbitrarily split up for no reason. Like, instead of walking in and using the first teleport area to teleport to like the final area, I have to teleport to one, walk through a door, and then teleport again. It feels weird because I just don't understand why they did it. I'm sure there's like a back end thing that like made them have to do it that way, but it was strange. As far as the minigames go, there are areas called gestural breaches that have little minigames that you can play to unlock swimsuits for the characters. The minigames themselves are kind of hit or miss for me. I didn't really enjoy them, but they're there if you want the swimsuits for the characters. I just did them for completion's sake and because swimsuits. I didn't change the costumes because I wanted the vanilla story experience, but you know. So, what do I think? Well, considering that I just spent the past like 23 minutes sucking on the game's I think that the verdict is that it's a very high recommendation. The story is absolutely sublime. This gameplay is a fantastic set of mechanics that flow together really well, and honestly, I don't think I have any major complaints with the game. Everything I've complained about has been pretty minor or completely optional. If you're a story-focused player, I think this game is absolutely for you. If you're not good at game mechanics, just play it on the easiest difficulty. It's there for a reason. Have fun. Like, no one's gonna judge you for it. If you're a gameplay focused player, then this game can be for you, depending on how much you like figuring out builds. If you're willing to engage with the bare basics of the build crafting in this game, you'll probably enjoy yourself. If you're willing to spend a lot of time in the menus, the level of power you can get is absolute insanity. If you're not willing to menu at all though, this game might not be for you. If you're an old Final Fantasy fan who has been lamenting the shift to real-time combat in the main series, look no further. This is the game you've been wanting since the shift happened. I hope that this review has provided you with enough information to decide whether you want to actually pick up this game or not. If it has, I'm glad I helped. And if not, please tell me below what's missing so I can fix it for whatever video I'm working on next. Thank you for joining me on this video, and I hope to see you next time. If you enjoyed this video, please consider dropping me a like and subscribing to me for more content like this. Comments are also appreciated since I always enjoy open dialogue and I'm open to having my opinions changed. Have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.